Hey, have you ever done something that was completely outside of your comfort zone, all for the sake of doing it for the plot? Welcome to another episode of The Last Climb.
In today's episode, let me tell you about the story of 4 girls who overestimated their climbing experience and climbed a mountain without an experienced guide, all because they wanted to do it for the plot. It happened in spring of the year 2019, when the social media site TikTok was just becoming popular. 4 friends ran a shared TikTok account where they did things for the plot. They called themselves the Plotline Society, and they were Sydney Collins, Peyton Monroe, Kenzie Walker, and Madison Brooks. They were 23-year-old girls from Seattle who met in university way back in 2015 through Greek life and have since then become attached at the hip in everything they did. They treated each other like actual sisters, and within their sorority, they were the closest to one another. They understood each other so well, and they operated on similar wavelengths with just about everything: school, life, fashion, love, food, and more. Their TikTok account began in their final year of college, sometime in September 2018, when they decided to make the most of the time they had left before they had to graduate, go their separate ways, and enter the real world. They decided to go on random side quests all throughout the year, making sure every moment of their remaining time left was spent making memories and having fun. Their TikTok bio even read, "Doing whatever we want for the plot." They initially began their account by simply documenting the normal side quests they did, like go cafe hopping across the city, try expensive restaurants on the weekends, go to new clubs or bars around the area, or go on road trips across states. Before, only close family, friends, and girls from their sorority watched their content. It was not until they went on a wild spring break trip in San Juan, Puerto Rico, that their videos started gaining more traction online. They started gaining followers and over 10,000 likes on each new post, their comment section filled with praises and admiration, requests, and suggestions for new side quests. Near the end of their university life, they had gained over 100,000 followers. At that point, their content had been a mix of fun and entertaining side quests, wild and slightly risky adventures, and sometimes just pointless funny content. They had gotten increasingly popular over the past year, and they were filled with the adrenaline rush of their quick rise to fame that they would churn out new content almost every day. On the 25th of April in 2019, the Plotline Society posted an announcement video on their TikTok account. They were going to climb Mara Peak on their own, a side quest that was in the works for quite a few months now. The girls had previously conquered Mount Fuji on their own during their Japan vacation back in March, and this time they wanted to climb the highest trekking peak in Nepal that was known for its panoramic summit views. Just before they were set to graduate from university, sometime in June of that same year. This planned climb would be their most thrilling adventure to date, and they were going to accomplish it in the second week of May. Almost immediately after posting the announcement video, thousands of likes and comments came flooding in from their audience, asking them to do certain TikTok challenges on the mountain during the climb and when they reached the summit. Seeing the overwhelmingly positive response from the people, the girls immediately set to work.
You see, they had a systemic structure, one they talked about in depth in one of their older videos.
Sydney was their quote-unquote leader, and she was mainly in charge of brainstorming for their content. The other girls chipped in their ideas as well, but Sydney managed the majority of it, thanks to her extensive knowledge of social media marketing analytics. She also managed their account, which meant she was the main handler of posting, replying to comments, and going through their account's social media engagements. Peyton had full control of logistics. She booked the hotels, tours, plane tickets, and the like for all of their travels. She had the reins when it came to navigation. When they needed to buy gear for anything, like the time they went scuba diving, she prepared everyone's diving gear. Or, like the time they baked 10 cakes in under 24 hours, she gathered the baking equipment and ingredients. Kenzie managed the finances. She kept track of whatever outflows they had for their side quests, made sure everyone paid Peyton on time for whatever equipment and materials she procured for the group. When they started receiving PR boxes, Peyton also managed those. She took care of the cash inflows and outflows, especially when their side quests became increasingly more rigorous, elaborate, and expensive. Finally, Madison handled the editing. She was the most well-versed in technology and video editing, and she worked fast too. The girls would sometimes come in to help, especially on the occasions that they would release back-to-back content in a week. But most of the time, Madison worked alone. Her editing skills made their videos engaging and entertaining, and she always knew how to frame each video to immediately attract the attention of both old and new fans whenever their videos would pop up on someone's For You page.
For a social media account that was just initially created for fun, these girls definitely ran their account like the military, no?
In the next few weeks leading up to their Mara Peak climb, the girls worked on the final stages of their preparations. Sydney finalized the main video's content storyboard and compilation of the TikTok challenges they would do. Peyton finalized the details with their chosen expedition company based in Kathmandu that was going to assist with the procurement of the climbing gear and equipment, the necessary local permits, and the transportation and itinerary. Kenzie with the expenses and budgeting, and Madison with the editing of the pre-climb contents they recorded in advance, including this entire preparation process to build up the hype and anticipation for the climb, and preparing text and motion graphics, as well as audio and video assets to make editing during the climb easier. It did not take up too much of their time, so in between the logistical and finance work and the content creation, the girls also worked on building stamina and conditioning their muscles and bodies for the weeks of trekking. Finally, on the 11th of May, with their bags and filming equipment, Sydney pressed record on her vlogging camera, and the girls of Plotline Society all piled into Peyton's car and headed for Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Thanks to Madison's efficient and seamless editing skills, they were able to post one more short TikTok before their flight. One layover in Doha, and around 20 hours later, their fans received another notification. The girls had landed in Tribhuvan International Airport, Kathmandu. After the flight, they checked into their hotel in Thamel to rest, allowing them to adjust to the time zone and be ready for the final stretch of preparations. For the next 2 days, the girls worked on finishing any final tasks for their climb. They met with the liaison officer of their expedition company, who was handling their expedition, who also assisted them with processing their required permits, their climbing permits, the local area permit, plus the Makalu Barun National Park permit, and Tim's cards. When they were arranging their climb with the expedition company, the company recommended a popular route for Mara Peak, which would take approximately 18 to 20 days. This was an ideal plan for the girls, who would only miss roughly 3 weeks of university. Part of the package the girls had availed with their expedition company included a day-by-day itinerary, a pre-climb briefing, a gear check, a route explanation, and a weather and altitude strategy. When the liaison officer asked them if they wanted to hire Sherpa guides, they declined, and told him the current package was sufficient enough for them to make it on the mountain alone. They mentioned their experiences, but a later interview and investigation revealed that the information they had given to their officer was exaggerated, making it sound like they were far more experienced than they actually were. After the pre-climb briefing that included a gear check, route explanation, and weather and altitude strategy, the girls completed the essential missing gear they needed to get: gloves, extra crampon straps, and a printed map and compass. 2 days later, on the 15th of May, 2019, the actual beginning of the climb came. At Tribhuvan International Airport, they strapped on their vlogging cameras to their bodies, SD cards slipped in, batteries fully charged, and boarded the small STOL aircraft that would take them to Lukla. The 19-seater de Havilland Canada DHC-6 twin otter plane flew Sydney, Peyton, Kenzie, and Madison, and another group of 4 who were discussing about their plans after they landed at the airport. Their porters and Sherpas were going to meet them by the entrance of the airport, and were actually already waiting there. In an interview with the other passengers on the plane, they recalled the 4 girls glancing their way every now and then for the entire duration of the plane ride. One of those climbers, Tanya Bennett, overheard judgmental comments from the group of 4 while her group's leader reviewed their route to them again. Tanya had explained that she immediately had a read on the kind of people those 4 girls were. They were the type to make fun of those they believed were weaker, all because they had chosen to be independent and no longer rely on experienced Sherpas. She said they were the type to have superiority complexes, probably because they had overcome things that were difficult or challenging and had come out victorious. They, according to her, were probably even the type to believe that one challenging experience already builds enough character to be able to withstand anything else, making them better than everyone else. The fact that they were whispering amongst themselves in such a small capacity aircraft was proof enough of how highly they thought of themselves.
I mean, it was kind of hard to pretend you could not hear what they were saying, especially if they weren't being subtle and were obviously talking about you.
They, according to Tanya's answers in the interview, were making fun of her group for bringing along Sherpas on a mountain like Mera Peak that was considered as a non-technical trekking peak. Unlike Mount Everest, where the Nepali government required foreign climbers to book a Sherpa guide, it was possible to have expeditions on Mera Peak without guides. It was not required, but it was also extremely rare and high risk. Some sort of partial support at certain points of the climb were still necessary and reduced the risks, something that Tanya's group considered. Although rare and more dangerous, successful climbs without Sherpas were still possible for Mera Peak, an option that the Plotline Society had chosen and one that Tanya's group had not.
Well, Tanya's group was not doing this climb for the plot anyway. That was the whole point of their climb, to reach a mountain summit on their own without a Sherpa's help.
Tanya said she had also heard and read about Mera Peak being labeled as a non-technical trekking peak climb that was doable without a Sherpa, but her group was not highly skilled and professional enough for that yet. Her group did not want to risk anything, knowing that they were just starting out with mountain climbing. Even then, after all, Mera Peak was not a mountain without its own set of dangers and risks. Advanced alpine climbing skills were not a requirement, but the final ascent to Mera Peak included glacier travel, steep snow slopes, and exposure to high altitude conditions. Basic mountaineering techniques were essential, and Tanya's group decided that they still needed to work on that more before they would feel confident enough to go on expeditions on their own or with fewer help. The plane ride from Kathmandu to Lukla only took about 25 to 35 minutes, and soon enough, the plane descended and landed at Tenzing Hillary Airport. As soon as the pilot released the fasten seatbelt signs, Sydney, Peyton, Kenzie, and Madison stood up, eager to depart from the plane. They departed from the plane and headed straight for the baggage carousel to retrieve their checked luggage. Tanya recalled following behind the eager group as they made it outside the airport, where the group's porters were waiting, and Tanya's own group's porters and Sherpas were also waiting. After the initial introductions and discussions with the porters, the trek started, and they started recording the trek. Each girl took clips of their surroundings, capturing the charm of Lukla village. They walked through Lukla village's main street and soon made it out, descending out of Everest's main trail and turning south towards Surkey. Recovered footage timestamped from their first day also included clips of the girls crossing suspension bridges and walking through forested trails, walking all the way to Paya, the first village stop with valley views. Their cameras had captured views of higher Himalayan peaks. Here, the girls stopped to rest for the day before they would continue the following day. Immediately, they pulled out their tripod, getting to work filming clips for their TikTok challenges. Tanya's group had also been trekking at a similar pace and had seen the group film their challenges. Tanya recalled seeing them retaking their videos a few times before they deemed their footage good enough. That was the last Tanya had seen the group for a while, because the Plotline Society had left earlier than Tanya's group the following morning. For the next 6 days, the girls went through different villages, capturing stunning views on their cameras and maintaining a steady elevation with each new day. After Paya, they reached Pangam, a Sherpa village at the base of the trail to Pangam La Pass. The village had been full of Sherpa life and culture, witnessing traditional farming and cultural practices. On their third day from Pangam, they trekked to Ningzo, then on their fourth to Chatrakola, 2 small, remote villages along the trail. On these 2 days, they went through rolling terrains, walked through forests and ridges, crossed rivers, all while taking in the peaceful surroundings and passing by other groups of climbers as well. Then on their 5th and 6th days, they moved higher up to the high villages of Kothe and Thangnak. At this part of the climb, they were already starting to see snow-covered peaks and the first views of Mera Peak. Here, the girls also rested and adjusted to the height once more. From Thangnak to Karay for their 7th day, the climb would become steeper, and after that, they would make it to the high camps. The first week and a half was not too bad. They trekked through the villages safely, did more TikTok challenges, and on more relaxing days, did TikTok lives to update the fans on their progress. Soon enough, the group had made it to Karay, the actual base camp for Mera Peak. Here, they parted ways with their porters. At Karay, They rested for a bit and acclimated to the altitudes, adjusting to the height. Without wasting too much time, they also began the preparations for their climb at midnight. They went over their route once more, backed up photos and videos, repacked their day packs, and made sure none of their gears were broken or faulty. Then, at exactly 12 midnight, Sydney, Peyton, Kenzie, and Madison were ready, and the group departed Carre, moving up the rocky slope and toward the glacier edge. The weather wasn't bad, but a thin layer of clouds lingered above the glacier. As they began the climb, the group also switched out their regular cameras for their action vlogging cameras, making it easier for them to take a lot of footage whilst climbing. About 45 minutes later, they reached the glacier edge. The wind slowly started picking up, snow passing through their camera's footage like a layer of smoke. Before they moved forward, the group recorded even more TikTok challenges, laughing quietly on the silent glacier.
I don't know, guys. Personally, on a climb at midnight, mind you, shouldn't you be locked in and not recording TikTok challenges?
Sydney, being the group's unofficial leader, led them as they roped up, Peyton behind her and Kenzie and Madison at the rear. Their spacing was uneven, and already the ascent was awkward, but they pushed forward anyway. They made it to Lower Mara Glacier, but sometime after arriving, the visibility dropped even more as stronger winds rushed in, carrying snow across the surface. A whiteout began forming. Peyton called out for Sydney, telling her that they should probably go back because the situation wasn't looking too good. Sydney refused and pushed forward, pulling everyone along with her. Kenzie's camera panned up ahead of her, and the footage captured nothing but her friends in front of her and white snow. The established trail was partially covered by the blanket of snow. With the trail gone, Sydney had no choice but to keep moving forward anyway. They moved further up, but with each step they took, the wind blew stronger and stronger.
Little did the group know, a blizzard had already been brewing.
20 minutes in, the wind was constantly picking up, and before long it had turned into a full-blown blizzard. The video footage captured nothing but the strong movement of white and the loud billowing of the wind. Finally, Peyton managed to convince Sydney to turn around, shouting over the strong winds to pull her friend back. They descended slowly, but the strong winds, rapidly dropping temperatures, and zero visibility made it significantly more difficult. Kenzie shouted over the wind, asking if they should just wait it out. Madison disagreed, because if they did, they would eventually succumb to exhaustion and possibly hypothermia. And so, they continued their descent.
But the girls probably had never been used to this kind of cold, if the way their bodies quickly gave up, not even 5 minutes after that descent had to count for anything.
One by one, their legs gave up and they collapsed face first on the cold, white blanket of snow. The cameras, strapped around their necks, captured nothing but darkness and the sounds of the loud, harsh blizzard. A little over 24 hours later, after the blizzard had ended, Tanya's group were climbing up when they saw a huge lump on the ground up ahead. They moved closer and discovered 4 lifeless bodies. Immediately, Tanya's group's Sherpas responded quickly, pulling out their satellite radios to alert the expedition company in Kathmandu, quickly describing what they had seen, and to immediately dispatch a rescue team. It was not long after they had called, Tanya recalled, that a rescue team arrived, retrieving the pale, rigid bodies of the girls back to Carre base camp. Then, from there, with the helicopter, they transported the bodies back to Kathmandu. One member of the rescue team then contacted the expedition company after finding their permits in Peyton's bag, informing them of the situation. Then, upon arrival at Kathmandu, they were brought into the hospital for examination, but had been declared dead on arrival by the medical team. From there, the bodies were turned over to a local coroner facility for post-mortem examination and embalming. Official reports from the facility reported that no external injuries were found on any of their bodies. However, reports indicated that they most likely died from hypothermia. Supporting photographs of the bodies presented their pale, almost wax-like skin and bright red patches over their joints, evidence commonly associated with hypothermia. Simultaneous with the examination, the local police unit conducted investigations, retrieving recorded footage from the cameras found on their bodies, as well as from the backed-up hard drives found with the rest of their things in their rented lodge at Carre. The police conducted interviews with Tanya's group, with the rescue operators, and of course, the liaison officer that handled their expedition. Retrieved footage also revealed that the group had interacted with a few climbers at Carre on the night of their climb, and the police also sought these climbers out, asking them to provide information about the conversations they had with the victims. The responses were similar across the interviewed climbers. They had told the climbers of their background that they were TikTokers, and that their content was concentrated on doing things on their own, on doing things for the plot. It was their online branding, and they were determined to prove their capabilities on the mountain, and they said that they were going to do it themselves and without anyone else's help. This detail proved useful to the investigation, providing context as to why they had gone without a Sherpa.
Well, again, Sherpas weren't required on Mera Peak, but without them, the risks were higher after all.
At the same time, while the investigation was ongoing, the expedition company also contacted the families of the girls, coordinating with the local government and the embassy to process the transport of the bodies back to Seattle. After the tragic news was shared with their families, a statement on their account was released by Sydney's younger sister, informing their viewers of the death of the 4 girls. The news spread to their university, where the girls were also quite popular because of their affiliations and most of their audience makeup being people in their university. By early June, their bodies had been transported back to Seattle. Several local news outlets covered the wake and burial of the 4 girls. The local school paper also covered the news, and their bodies were also brought to their university, where viewing at their university and even at their sorority house was allowed for 3 days. The news coverage captured the crowds of students that gathered for the fallen TikTokers, consisting of friends and family and even just strangers studying at their university who did not know them. Despite the love the TikTokers had online, negative comments also slipped through. Some had said that they had anticipated the TikTok challenges they would do, and even the possible traction and social media engagement their content would make. But the group had never anticipated the dangerous crevasse that was waiting for them. They were even criticized for going out to climb in that weather, people online calling them stupid and ignorant, knowing how difficult it was to survive in a strong blizzard. At the same time, other climbers had defended the dead girls, saying that blizzards were not something you can actually avoid. Sometimes they would arrive suddenly, accelerate in speed, and grow in intensity without giving you enough time to get somewhere safely. Some climbers also added that their bodies, based on additional reports from the rescue team, had faced downward. With their bodies positioned this way, it had also implied that they were also on their way back, but because they were on their own and without a Sherpa, no one had been able to help them right away. Climbing blogs also analyzed the situation, adding on to the discussion that the duration of the blizzard, lasting for over 20-something hours, had stretched out the time that anyone else would have found them, because the blizzard had immobilized everyone from leaving. Several spliced videos of their announcement on TikTok made the rounds online. People pointed out how the Plotline Society had mentioned that this thrilling climb on Mera Peak was their last do-it-for-the-plot adventure before they graduated. This was the side quest that was supposed to change their lives. Haters online commented and said, well, it certainly changed their lives, just not in the way they had thought it would.
As we close this episode, think about your own do-it-for-the-plot side quests and think about whether they'll change your lives for the better and become a fun story you tell your kids and grandkids later on in the future, or if that do-it-for-the-plot side quest of yours will just lead to your tragic death, just like the deaths of Sydney Collins, Peyton Monroe, Kenzie Walker, and Madison Brooks. What a plot twist that was.